a review of student art illustrations compiled by the Virginia Writers Project, John Nicolay, editor. As a book, this collection did not begin as a project so much as a habit of looking. Over the years, I took photographs in art classrooms, in open studios, in galleries, and occasionally in the periphery of artists I encountered through friends, parents, and colleagues in writing. These were not arranged scenes. They were moments caught in passing. Students at work, canvases in transition, hands adjusting, pausing, correcting. What began as observation gradually accumulated into a record. For that, I owe thanks to all who appear here. The photos were taken between 1987 to 2000. The presence of talent made the work possible. The art is certainly exceptional and selected on that basis. I did not know the students as intimates. There were no long conversations, no shared confidences. They were, in a manner of speaking, passengers on my ship, individuals I encountered briefly, each absorbed in their own direction. That distance, though impersonal, offered a kind of clarity. Without the obligations of familiarity, one notices patterns. Gestures repeated, habits formed, a certain posture of attention that distinguishes one student from another. The intent of this collection is not to judge, nor to rank, nor to define excellence in any formal sense. The selection is deliberate but not comparative. It aims instead to present a range of engagement, different media, different approaches, different temperaments. A charcoal sketch beside a constructed form, a painted surface beside an assemblage, a student in a studio beside a work on a gallery wall. What connects them is not the outcome, but the effort. And within that effort, something more elusive appears. For many students, art exists within a familiar structure. It is a class to be taken, a requirement to be met, a place to gather with friends. The work is completed, submitted, and set aside. This is a reasonable and common experience. It is the visible surface of art education, a transactional exchange of time for credit, effort for evaluation, participation for belonging. But occasionally, and rarely, another pattern emerges. In open studios, especially among younger college students, freshmen just beginning to test their limits, there are those who remain after the class ended. They return when there is no requirement to return. They work at odd hours. They rework the same piece, not because they have been told to, but because they cannot leave it alone. What marks them is not confidence, but dissatisfaction. Their efforts do not satisfy them. Something is missing, though they cannot yet say what that something is. They are often quiet, even introverted. There is hesitancy in them, a doubt that does not resolve itself easily. From the outside, it can resemble uncertainty or a lack of direction. But over time, this restlessness is not a deficit. It is the beginning of a different engagement, one that is not content with completion. This is where the distinction between interest and passion takes form. Interest is manageable. It fits within the boundaries of the assignment. It accepts the terms that are given. Passion is exhaustive. It does not conclude when the task is finished. It lingers. It revisits. It questions the adequacy of what has been done. It demands more attention than is required and offers no guarantee of recognition in return. For a teenager, this can be a difficult awakening. Adolescence is a time when social alignment matters deeply, when acceptance is often measured in visible terms: approval, praise, and accomplishment. In such an environment, to care intensely about something, especially something as vulnerable as one's own creative work, is to risk standing apart. The student who stays behind, who revises endlessly, who is unsettled by their own results, may not be the one who is most visibly rewarded. They may, in fact, feel the absence of such rewards more acutely. And so, many never arrive or arrive only briefly. They move through art as they move through other subjects, and there's no fault in that. But for the few who encounter this deeper current, even if only for a moment, the experience can be transformative. The work is no longer about finishing. It is about continuing. The images in this collection attempt to hold that moment. They are inevitably derivative. They originate in real settings, but they have been adjusted, cleaned of visual clutter, relieved of distractions, occasionally refined to emphasize a contemplative expression that might otherwise pass unnoticed. These are not inventions, but clarifications. Digital tools allow for such adjustments, and like any tool, they require discipline. Used without care, they distort. Used with restraint, they bring forward what was already present, but not fully seen. The aim here has been the latter, to remain faithful to the spirit of the moment while allowing the viewer to encounter it more directly. What emerges across these images is not mastery, nor even consistency, but attention. Attention that is sustained, often uncertain, sometimes frustrated, but persistent. The student who looks again, who adjusts, who hesitates before committing to the next mark. This is the quiet center of the work. There is no clear measure for this kind of attention. It does not always result in accolades. It does not always produce work that is immediately resolved or even successful by conventional standards. But it signals a shift from compliance to inquiry, from assignment to exploration. It is the point at which art ceases to be an external requirement and becomes an internal necessity. Whether that necessity endures is not for this collection to determine. What can be observed, however, is the condition in which it begins, a dissatisfaction that does not discourage, a doubt that does not retreat, a persistence that continues beyond what is asked. These are quiet qualities. They do not announce themselves, but they are present, and when they are present, they change the nature of the work. This collection records those conditions as they appeared, briefly, imperfectly, but with enough clarity to suggest what lies beneath the surface of the classroom and the studio. Not the finished statement, but the act of becoming. Obviously, some of these creations were extraordinary, masterful in the most competitive of environments. Many of these appear in the collection to marquee the possible. And perhaps that is the more honest subject of art at this stage. Not what has been achieved, but what has been awakened. I strove to illustrate the variety of media students chose. The variety is not exhaustive. The sage said, "Only God can make a tree." Counters, "Only an artist can capture the tree into an illusion." Is art a metaphor for something? Engage. Create. Express yourselves. Thank you for listening.